Welcome back to Shred Guitar in the 80s. Today's going to be a fun day. I get to talk about one of my all-time favorite guitar players and one of my biggest influences. I'll never forget the first time I heard Eric Johnson in the early 80s. I was just spending a lazy afternoon watching TV, flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden I saw this amazing guitar playing by this skinny blonde-haired guy on Austin City Limits. And he was just playing these fast pentatonic scales that were picked. And it just blew my mind how fluid he was and how unique. And growing up listening to Hendrix and Clapton and Blackmore and all those guys, I was just blown away by how new and fresh he played the pentatonic scales. It was just unbelievable. I'd heard of Eric Johnson before that in the early 80s from Guitar World magazine. I was thumbing through an issue. I believe Billy Gibbons or Stevie Ray Vaughan might have been on the cover. It's been so long ago I forget. But I came upon this article on Texas guitar players, and I remember Eric caught my eye because he was holding this Robin guitar that I thought was really cool. So that article in Guitar World really stuck in my mind, and when I saw him playing Austin City Limits, I was totally blown away. But I couldn't find any recordings on him. I went to the record store and looked, and there was nothing there. So fast forward a couple years, I go to the newsstand, like I do every month, to buy the new issue of Guitar Player magazine, and look who's on the cover. It's Eric Johnson. Well, I was just totally blown away that Eric was on the cover, and I was so excited when I saw there's a sound page in here. There was a flexi disc that used to come in every Guitar Player magazine that you can play on your turntable, and in this issue it was Eric Johnson's performance from Austin City Limits of Cliffs of Dover. Well, that song just blew me away when I heard it, and that melody always stuck in my head. So I rushed home and tore the sound page out of the magazine, dropped the needle down, and there it was, those beautiful flowing pentatonic scales. It just blew my mind. I remember spending hours just figuring out or trying to figure out what he was doing. It was just mind-blowing. This whole issue is just incredible, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute. But I thought I would kind of start with some Eric Johnson style pentatonics and how I learned them and how I figured it out, and show you some patterns I like to play. And then I'll talk a bit more about Eric and this Guitar Player magazine. There's some incredible players in this magazine, so let's get started. So when I first heard Eric playing those incredible descending, cascading pentatonic licks, it just blew my mind. And I knew that he wasn't just playing in one position, he was using all the patterns. I wasn't sure if he was doing it 3 notes per string or 2 notes per string. I remember watching Austin City Limits, but at the time I wasn't really paying attention to how he was playing it. My jaw was just on the floor. So when I started to transcribe some of his licks, I noticed that there was one pattern that occurred a lot in his playing, and it was a 5-note grouping. And for me, the easiest way to play it or finger it was this. The tricky part for me was the picking. I was really into alternate picking at the time. I didn't know that he was economy picking that, so it was very hard for me to pick that. I just tried to alternate pick that stuff. What he was doing was going 15-12 down up, 15-12 down up on the second, 14 on the third with the down, and then just dropping the pick, economy picking with the downstroke to start the phrase over. And then the very last lick, I just alternated to do the octave. A lot of times Eric will end his phrases with the octave of the pentatonic, the key's playing in, on the higher note like that. So slow would be this. I didn't realize he was economy picking until I saw the second Austin City Limits, and I videotaped it on the VHS, and I was able to slow stuff down on my VHS. It didn't have any sound when I slowed it down, but I could see the strokes. And I noticed that every time he did that, he would just drop his pick, sweep pick or use economy picking to start the phrase over. And that just opened up all sorts of doors for me. I knew I was onto something, and I just went back and rearranged all of his licks using that pattern, and there it was. Eric Johnson style was revealed to me. And it was pretty mind-blowing at the time. But before I did the economy picking, I thought there's got to be some way I can play these lines. So I came up with a way of playing these lines that isn't really picking, it's more hammer and pull-offs, but it works great and it gets a really fluid sound. The cool thing is that I would learn later that the approach I came up with to play these was very Shawn Lane-like, which was pretty mind-blowing to me. When I saw Shawn Lane's instructional videos, I saw that he was doing this type of thing, and it was really cool, gave me a lot of confidence to pursue it more. And here's what I came up with to play the Eric Johnson licks. I'll play it for you. So what I'm doing there is I'm starting with an upstroke, and I do an upstroke on the 15, pull off the 12 in the first string. Then I go down on 15, pull off the 12 in the second string. Then I just hammer my second finger onto the third string at the 14th fret to complete the 5-note pattern. So I get this. Then I just repeat that on the next pattern. That opened up all sorts of doors for me, and it was really fluid sounding. It was easy for me to do, which was really cool, because when I'm improvising, I don't like to do stuff that's hard. I like to do stuff that just falls under my fingers and create some music without killing myself. So the first thing I did was learn all the positions of the pentatonic scale, all 5 positions, just memorize it like crazy. Then I would just kind of weave in and out, changing positions like Eric. And that's kind of what I came up with. Here would be some of the ideas that I came up with. Great for me. It had that fluid cascading sound like Eric, and it was easy to play for me. I didn't have to worry about the economy picking, which I'd work on later and kind of get down when I play these, so I do that. But the hammer on pull off just came really natural to me. Here'd be an example of a lick that I did combining the positions. And here's that lick slow. I'm doing the 5s to start it, and I kind of end with a 4, then I jump down and do 4 here, then I jump down and do 5, so it goes. And mixing between the 5 and the 4 is great when you're playing even. It just flows across the bar line. It has that Eric Johnson, Shawn Lane kind of feel. They do a lot of that kind of thing. You can also pick that. And that would be an Eric Johnson style run where you pick every note. And let me play that slow for you, changing positions. It goes like this. And then we'll just mix it up and try a bunch of different hammer-on variations. One thing I always did was play this over a groove. I'd do a lot of improvising and just kind of come up with these patterns over the beat. Because you're mixing between 4 and 5 and 6 note groupings, it's really great to tap your foot so you know where the pulse is and you can feel everything cascade across the bars. And I wouldn't start the lick on a downstroke every time either, like that would be on an off. So I just love these lines. I stick them in wherever I can. They work great over blues, rock stuff, really all sorts of different styles. They just sound amazing. So when I pulled this magazine out to do this episode, it was just like stepping into a time capsule. This is from May 86. 85, 86, 87, 88. I would say those were the most influential years for me in terms of my development and what I was listening to at the time. My playing really took shape in those years, and really I took it to the next level, which was pretty amazing for me. I practiced like crazy, and it seemed like every month there was this new amazing guitar player come out that I just had to learn what he was doing. Just mind-blowing. Thumbing through the magazine, it's pretty neat to look back and look what was going on in 1986. A cool thing, they had this From the Publisher article, and in it they're talking about Mike Varney's Spotlight column and talking about some of the players that have made it after appearing in that column, went on to become successful. They have Atomic Tommy McClendon from the April 83 issue. You have Jennifer Batten from February 84. They both appeared in the Spotlight column. Lanny Cordola appeared in the 85 issue. Tony Macalpine, the amazing Tony Macalpine, one of my big influences, was in the August 85 Spotlight. Billy Sheehan, the amazing Billy Sheehan, appeared in December 82. You have Steve Lynch, who went on to play an Autograph. It looks like he appeared in January 83. Scott Henderson would also appear. I believe he might have been like the first guy to appear in it in the September 82 issue. You had Paul Gilbert and Yngwie Malmsteen both in the February 83 issue. And Vinnie Moore, the amazing Vinnie Moore, he was in the January 85 issue. I remember reading all of these Spotlight columns and seeing all these players in the Spotlight column that Mike Varney did. I was just an avid guitar player, reader, and a fan of music in general, and especially hard rock and heavy metal. And Mike really featured just killer hard rock and heavy metal players in the Spotlight column. And I remember just looking forward to every issue so I could devour the Spotlight column and see who the next guy coming out was. Mark Norton, I remember Mark Norton appearing in the August 83 issue, and he changed his name to Mark St. John and went on to Kiss fame. So just amazing stuff in this magazine. Another really cool thing about this magazine is it had an article on a player that was just a huge guitar player around where I lived in northeastern Ohio, and that's the amazing Phil Keaggy. Phil Keaggy was just like the one everyone talked about. I mentioned this on a video I did on the great essential hard rock albums of the 70s. But Phil was just a really amazing player. And I remember reading this article, and I went out and bought the album that he had put out at that time. And it had a song called Sounds, and they actually transcribed some of the solo from that song in this issue. And if you get a chance, look it up on YouTube, Phil Keaggy Sounds, and listen to the outro solo. It's still mind-blowing after all these years. It's so fluid and his phrasing's so amazing. And you can hear elements of Holsworth. He was listening to Holsworth at the time, and you know, he had that blues rock phrasing from Playing with Glass Heart, and he kind of melded that with this legato style. It was amazing. And you know, in this article, he mentions Eric Johnson, and he talks about how when he sees Eric Johnson, he sort of wished he stuck with the trio format. He kind of went to a singer-songwriter thing a lot in the Christian world, but he kind of lamented that maybe he should have stayed in the trio format and did something like Eric did. But yeah, Phil's an amazing player. If you get a chance, check out the sound solo on YouTube, and I think you'll really dig it. The Eric Johnson article is just loaded with all sorts of stuff. The cool thing is he mentions Shawn Lane in here. They asked him who he considered to be the best undiscovered guitar hero, and he said Shawn Lane and Scott Henderson. So you can't go wrong with those two players, and Shawn was just unbelievable. And I think that's the first time I heard Shawn Lane, or heard of Shawn Lane, and I remember reading this article so much that, you know, that name stuck in my mind. And then when I saw him in the Spotlight column, not long after this, and then I heard Paul Gilbert talk about him, I knew I had to hear Shawn. And when I heard Shawn, I heard Shawn. I mean, Shawn was just the most mind-blowing guitar player I think I've ever heard. But this article by Eric's great, and Eric's so humble and down to earth and just talks about everything openly. It has all sorts of cool shots of his chord use and things like that, and different techniques he uses. At the time we didn't have videos, so we devoured every single thing we could, every photo, every little blurb in an interview to kind of figure out what our favorite players were doing. Just amazing stuff. This magazine's a lot of fun, just chock full of information. You know, this was our internet before the internet, you know, pretty amazing stuff. This is what I lived on, you know. So yeah, Eric Johnson, what an amazing player and just an absolute inspiration to me. I'm going to cover Eric a lot more on my channel. Hope you guys have fun with some of these pentatonic licks. And if you like this, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have, thank you. And thanks for hanging out with me. And until next time, have fun picking.